And I remember when we were sitting there watching Over the Edge, it started out great. Sunday Night Heat was a fucking blast. I remember marking out for that, whatever the hell we saw. The pay-per-view opened up with a great amount of energy. I thought the opening match was good. I just felt it brewing in the room. We were having a good time. The beers were flowing. We had ordered pizza, had snacks, laughing, having a great time. And I just felt that it was going to be a really fun night of wrestling. And it's what I lived for at that time. I absolutely lived for being able to do what I was doing right there at that very moment. A bunch of friends in my apartment, having some food, drinking some beer, and watching a WWE pay-per-view at the peak and height of the Attitude Era. For a wrestling fan, that's heaven. And I enjoyed being the host. I would always have people over at my apartment because I was always the one with his own place. And this would always be at my house. So we're sitting there, and then we get to Jim Ross just saying something like, we've got big problems out here, and they cut to an Owen Hart pre-tape, and then they go into the video package for Owen Hart and the Godfathers match, and how they have put him back under the mask of the blue blazer and all of that. And we come back from the video package to see Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler sitting there with extremely concerned looks on their faces to let us know that Owen Hart has fallen from his apparatus that he was going to be lowered from the ceiling by. And I remember at the time, we're still laughing and having a good time, and we now see what's going on, but I don't think anybody in that room was thinking death. We were thinking that he was hurt. We were like, holy shit, Owen is hurt. That sucks. Let's kind of continue on with our conversation while we eyeball the pay-per-view. We were not initially concerned, because I don't think it quite hit us what they were talking about. Jim Ross said that he fell or there was a malfunction or something like that. They didn't really say, I don't think, at least memory serves, that he fell 200 fucking feet or whatever it is down. So I don't think it was really registering to me that Owen fell from the fucking ceiling. But I remember initially being concerned and worried that Owen was hurt, hoping that it wasn't going to be something that was going to keep him out of action for a while. Imagine that, before reality hits. Here I am just hoping that Owen Hart hasn't blown a knee out. Or even worse, maybe broken his neck, broken his back. Something that's going to cause him significant injury, time off from the wrestling business, or even worse, a career-ending injury. I don't think my brain wanted to accept that this was a lot more serious than it was. Until they cut back to the announce booth, and either Lawler or Jim Ross, I can't remember which one, mentioned something about external heart massage. And one of the people in my house was an EMT. And he said, holy shit. I don't think this is good. They're trying to resuscitate him. They're trying to bring him back to life. And that's kind of when things changed. The atmosphere changed in my place for sure. They went on with a couple of matches, but we all knew something was wrong, and we were hoping we'd get an update. I remember thinking about calling a couple of hotlines, which I did. I even have recordings of those on my second channel, which I never use, that I uploaded maybe 5 years ago. I'll put a link to those right in the top right-hand corner there. Some of you have heard those before. I've posted them before, but I did call a hotline a 900 number that you would find in the wrestling magazines during that time. I called it the day after to hear the report on Owen. But we really wanted to know what was going on. I think they had 1 or 2 matches. I think Val Venus had a match, and then there was the Union match with Mick Foley and all those guys. And that's when they cut to Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler, and Jim Ross makes that painful announcement to the audience. And it was just, I'll just never forget the words, because we're all sitting there, we're like, okay, be quiet, be quiet. Jim Ross is about to talk. And he says, I have the unfortunate responsibility to let all of you know that Owen Hart has died. Owen Hart has tragically died, is what he said. And we were like, holy fuck. And we knew it wasn't a work. I mean, never once did I question this at all. Even back then, and I'm in my mid-20s, but I know how shit works. I'm not stupid. So when they're cutting to the crowd and they're not showing anything that's taking place in the ring, and just with the demeanor of JR and King, you knew. Deborah crying backstage when they're trying to interview her. You knew shit wasn't good. And when Jim Ross uttered those words, it was a sad day for wrestling fans around the world. It was so shocking. And we went on to sit there and watch more wrestling matches take place, which still blows my mind. Now, it's a big debate. It's always been one. It's a 20-year-long debate. I think we can put it to bed now. But WWE kept the show going. After it was known that Owen Hart didn't make it, we went on to have a WWE title match and a WWE title switch with The Undertaker beating Stone Cold Steve Austin. And WWE would later go on to explain that they had obligations with the pay-per-view companies and the cable systems, and if they didn't provide a product or whatever, blah, 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 fuck all that. I'm sure they would have made an exception if a human being dies during their performance on this pay-per-view. I think it's all right to cancel the show. It's nothing that I'm going to crucify WWE for. You know, if Bret Hart and other family members are willing to work with WWE again, who am I to say anything? Oh, it's so fucked up that they kept the show going. If it was up to me, if I'm in Vince McMahon's shoes, if I have any sort of say or power in WWE at all, without hesitation, I am canceling this show and I am ending the show. The fans are not going to be mad. At least they better not. Well, knowing wrestling fans, they probably would be mad and chant bullshit. But I would like to think that they have a little bit more respect than that. So I reject the theory that WWE had no choice in continuing the show. I think they should have stopped it, but also that's hindsight. You know, when you're presented with this and you have to make a split-second decision on the spot there, they chose to carry on with the show. Yes, I wish they would have made a different decision, but hey, I wasn't in their shoes, so I'm almost willing to kind of give them a pass on that. But still, if it was up to me, the show would have ended right there. The next night on Raw was extremely moving and emotional, and some people didn't like that. They felt like WWE was cashing in on Owen Hart's death, which I don't see it that way at all. I think they were sending him off. That talent was genuinely destroyed. I mean, the interviews that you saw that night on Raw, everybody that was interviewed that could muster up the courage to speak, were an absolute train wreck mess. Everybody was just bawling their eyes out. I've never heard Jim Ross cry in my life, and he was weeping at the end of that Monday Night Raw. And whenever I hear him deliver that line, when he says, I hope I can be as good a man as him so I can see him again one day, it is one of the most heart-wrenching and heartbreaking things to ever hear. And that was such a sad night. I mean, the talent was just devastated. Owen had so many friends there. Not to mention everything that had already gone on with Bret Hart and the Montreal Screwjob. Bret is now in WCW. He was supposed to be on the Jay Leno show. He was flying to LA when he found out. So that made everything even more weird. And I just don't think it's productive anymore to try to place blame or try to say, why did this happen? I am frustrated as hell with this death. Do not get me wrong. It pains me every day to know that Owen Hart should still be here. This bullshit should never have happened. He should have never been in that stupid costume. He should have never been hoisted up to the ceiling. And you know what? To go one better, Vince should have never screwed Bret Hart. Because had the Montreal Screwjob not taken place, I fully believe that we would have never seen Owen Hart put in that gimmick. He would have continued to ride along with his brother, or be affiliated with the Hart Foundation or Bret or something in some way. I just cannot see them making him the Blue Blazer with Bret still there. Just would be stupid to me. So looking back throughout history, there are so many heartbreaking things that took place in the wrestling business that, had they not happened, it may have prevented Owen Hart's death. You know, like the Screwjob, or just like Bret Hart leaving in general, you know, with him not going. Any number of things could have been done differently, and Owen Hart would still be here to this day. Even things that took place that day at Over the Edge probably could have gone differently. You know, maybe they do a different type of walkthrough in the rehearsal, or maybe Vince Russo changes his mind, or maybe they just do any sort of change that would wind up altering the course of Owen's fate. It's just, it's heartbreaking, it sucks, and it's frustrating too, to know that Owen Hart should still be here, man. He should be in his mid-50s, living a happy life. You know, to make everything worse, you know, to rub salt in the wound, you know, and just to squeeze lemon juice on that fucking paper cut. He was building his house with Martha. They were about to move in. They were moving in. They were going through the process of moving in. Owen is a family man. All he wanted to do was have a piece of dirt to build a house and raise his family. That is literally all he wanted. And he's the one that got taken away from us? Life is fucking insane. And they're in the process of moving in, and you have to get that phone call. And I know Martha is not everyone's favorite person. Look, I know she can be frustrating too. I think she's being a tad bit unreasonable, especially when it comes to Owen's legacy and, and Hall of Fame and things like that. But you have to understand, until you're in that position, you got no place to judge. Put yourself in her shoes. Put yourself going through what she went through. Would you want to work with the WWE again? Don't you think you'd be a little bit bitter? Hell, we got people fucking jumping off of bridges because Roman Reigns wins a wrestling match. Imagine if that same company kills your spouse. Are you going to want to do business with them? I doubt it. So maybe we should cut Martha some slack and understand that she has been dealt a terrible tragedy, and she's well within her right to never get over it. I don't blame her. It's been 20 years now. You don't get over losing someone like that. She never did. Her kids had to grow up without a dad. I'll tell you what, have you seen pictures of Owen Hart's son? The kid looks exactly like him. And whatever's going on with them, because we don't hear much about Owen Hart's kids, I hope they know how loved their dad was. If anything, if Martha shelters them from all things WWE, one thing I do hope is that they do understand how much Owens was loved by the fans and how much we all appreciated his career and how much we still talk about him. He's been dead for 20 years. And his death to me is just as memorable and hurts just as much as the day it happened. And I honestly mean that. And we had been through some deaths. I had started to get used to deaths in pro wrestling by this point. We had lost Eddie Gilbert, Adrian Adonis, Bruiser Brody. All of the Von Erich boys, I think, were gone by this point. Kerry had committed suicide. We had some tragedies and deaths. And even Brian Pillman, like I said, in 1997. So this was starting to happen. But you talk about being kicked in the teeth. This death did it. And for a while, it fucked me up, man. This death hit me hard. I think of modern wrestling fans now. I think the person they miss the most is Eddie Guerrero. Owen Hart was my Eddie Guerrero. He was the death that, really took a chunk out of my wrestling memories because Owen Hart and the entire Hart family were such a big part of it. So if for any reason you're anywhere near an alcoholic beverage, I want you to open it up and I want you to cheers to the life and the memory of Owen Hart. He will never be forgotten. He will always be beloved, and you can rest assured that you will always hear his name spoken in a positive way with nothing but praise and love on this channel because I loved Owen Hart that much. He was a hell of a talent, hell of a worker, hell of a man, and I miss him.